So, the other day, I was just ranting about pinball as I usually do, talking about some of the tournaments that I have to go to and how setting up travel for these tournaments is really difficult and very expensive to enter the tournaments, let alone get housing, all of that. And my friend, who was not into pinball in the slightest, stopped me and they asked, "Why pinball?" And I took a second and I was thinking to myself, I don't know. Why pinball? That's a great question. I have been obsessed with so many small hobbies throughout my life. I got into chess for a very long time. Played that on and off for about 2-3 years. Never got incredible at it, but it was something that I really enjoyed doing. But I never, traveled for tournaments. I would go to little local things, but I wouldn't travel out of state for tournaments. Whereas with pinball, that's something that I'm absolutely going to do because I want to meet more people, I want to get more experience. And I thought, well, why didn't I do that with chess? Another hobby that I had, rock climbing. I would do that pretty much every day, every other day. I would go to the gym, just start climbing. They have a scale there where you level up. You have V0 is the intro level, and you can climb up to, I think it's V. There are some gyms that set really hard problems with V14. I could never do that. I'm a shorter guy myself. I had troubles with the V5 sometimes, but I got to like the V5, V6 level, did that for a couple years. It was great for my health. I enjoyed doing it. But then I just stopped at some point. I had some friends that were doing it. It definitely wasn't it wasn't that I was lacking friends in the hobby. I had friends that did it, but it was something that I just kind of left on the wayside. And all across my life, I've had little hobbies that I pick up. I get really into it for a year or so, and then I drop them. But pinball feels different. Pinball, I've never been so invested in a hobby in my life. I made this YouTube channel. I never would have done that for any of the other hobbies that I've gotten into. I am creating this road to pro. I'm out here saying that I can make it to the top 250. That takes a lot of work and effort and money, things that I don't have a lot of, to be honest, with the work that I do. And I'm still choosing to do it. So I wanted to make a video to kind of explain why I am so attracted to pinball as a hobby and what's different about it. And then I also wanted to talk about some of the things that I think hinder pinball for people that are not involved in it, and why it might be a little bit harder of a hobby to get into. Because that's the way I view it. I think that it's very, very difficult to really understand the true essence of why pinball is so great. But once you latch onto that, it takes a hold of you, and it's addicting like nothing else. I'll say that it's truly something that I can't get off my mind. But I do think that it took me a while to get there. So let's talk about why I love pinball first. First off, and I think this applies to a lot of people, it's the physicality of pinball. I don't think there's a single hobby that's I'd call pinball a gaming hobby. I don't think there's a single gaming hobby outside of pinball that has the physicality that pinball does. And I think that achieves two goals. I think it attracts two different types of people. I think pinball attracts type A type people, which are, you can set yourself achievable goals and you feel yourself get better over time. There's a ladder that you're climbing. You enter your local tourneys and you start playing players that you think are unbeatable in the beginning, but then you start watching videos, you start learning techniques, and you start climbing those rungs, and you're like, okay, I've gotten one win on this player that I never thought I could beat before. It's a very skill-based game, but there's also an element of randomness to some degree. As you get better, you try to minimize that randomness as much as possible, but sometimes you will get a bad plunge on the classic. Sometimes you hit a sling and you do a little bit of a nudge and that's not enough and it goes out. The randomness allows for big things to happen in a tournament that I think other gaming hobbies don't allow. A game that I'm very into is Rocket League. I actually play that quite a bit with some friends back at home. For anyone that doesn't know what Rocket League is, it's car soccer essentially. You can do 1v1, 2v2, 3v3, and it's just all these cars driving at a ball trying to get it into the other goal. But you can fly in the game if you learn how to like flutter tap the boost button, and you can like stay elevated, and you can air dribble. There's all these complicated things that the really good players do, in the same way that pinball has a lot of techniques that if you want to learn, it's just more tools, right? So I think for a similar reason I got into to Rocket League, not to the same extent as pinball, I'd say, because I don't play it competitively. I play the competitive in the game, but I don't go and actually like try to be one of the best players in it. It's more of a casual thing I do with my friends back from high school. But there's not a lot of randomness in it. Every touch is very methodical. If you don't hit the shot, there's a reason for it. It's because you didn't do something correctly, or the other player just played good enough that there was just no way you were getting in. With pinball, you're not playing someone directly. It's just you in the game. I guess you could say you're playing the game directly, but there's always something that could go wrong, and I think that almost makes the game better, because it allows for moments where the game is close with two players that should not be as close as they are. A really like maybe one of the state's best, and then a newer player always has some percentage of a shot if they have their game and they're focused and they're locked in and they're able to just stay alive. And those games are always the ones that I like to watch. I think those are very interesting to watch. It showcases that sometimes you'll have a player that they don't know any rules in the game yet, but they're playing competitively, and then I see something in them. I'll be like, oh, you should definitely put some time into this, because you have it in you. I don't know what that would be, but it's just that thing. Some players have it in them, and I like to see that in people. So I think that's one aspect, is that it allows for big swings either way, of like big wins or big losses, and that's always exciting. The second type of person I think that attracts is, funnily enough, neurodivergent people. Pinball, there's nothing like it. It's pure physics, and it boils down to hitting a ball with paddles and constant sound and stimulation. I know plenty of people in the pinball scene that are neurodivergent one way or the other. It is or it is not a spectrum, but I do think that pinball as a hobby, as a sport, is very attractive to people that like stimulation. I myself am obsessed with, I actually get overstimulated sometimes. I'm a headphones user occasionally because, if I'm in a loud bar and I'm trying to pay attention to the pinball machine, it's too much for me and I start losing track of focus and everything. So I need to put headphones in to block things out. But either way, there's something attractive about you rip that spinner and you get that spinner sound, and that is an indication that you've done well. I think that sound and the impact, some of the machines that have the shakers in them when they vibrate when you hit something, you can't get that in any other arcade package, any other hobby. So yeah, I think these are the two types of people that it attracts, right? And that's why I think pinball is great to begin with. The second thing is, I think that pinball, from my perspective, has a incredible ability to grow from what it is now. And what I mean by that is, I'll talk about the competitive scene first. I think that we have incredible players at the top, nearly untouchable to the average player, right? Like you have your Escher Lekoffs and your Jason Zollers and your Arvids and your Raymonds, all of that. It just, the play that they put down when you watch a stream is so impressive. But I still think that the current player base is nowhere near the skill ceiling for what it could be. Pinball skills are constantly evolving. New techniques become the meta for machines that have existed for years and years and years, as new gameplay mechanics get discovered, as people discover that, like, oh, you can just, there's this certain shot that didn't seem very important before, but now with, if you combine it with this kind of thing, or the multi-ball over here, then all of a sudden it becomes very valuable over time. Shatzing on moderns is something that more people are doing nowadays, which I feel like in the 2010s-ish era, people kind of forgot about shatzing, except for saving, but now it's a control thing. It's constantly evolving, especially with new machines coming out all the time. I feel like with a lot of games, you wait a year or two, probably longer, for a new competitive game to come out that's really going to take the scene. With pinball, we have from Stern at least 3 machines coming out every year. We have from Jersey Jack about 2 to 3 coming out every year, and now we have all these competing companies. Barrels of Fun just had Labyrinth come out, which I wouldn't say is a game you see very often in competition, but they definitely have the potential to release more like that. Big Lebowski is out there. You have all these people making their own machines that could be competitively viable. I think we're on the apex of something, and I think that we are moving towards reaching what pinball is, like the maximal pinball echelon, I guess I'll say. That's a lot of fancy words, but I think that we're on the up and up, and it's only going to keep moving as long as the energy's there. I love that. I think that I caught onto pinball at a very good time. It's a very exciting time. And as pinball gets shown to more people, the more potential there is for a competitive scene. So it's endless, honestly. If any of you are aware of the esports scenes that go on for gaming, big ones that come to mind right now, Smash Ultimate, the Nintendo game, has a huge competitive scene that has teams. They're sponsored teams. So they don't actually play as teams. They still play individually, but they're all sponsored by the same company. So they all wear the same outfits, and they go out to these tournaments representing that company. They pay them. I think that pinball players at the top level should be able to make enough to at least survive. I'm not actually 100% sure how that math works out, but I'm sure with the travel and everything, that's not possible currently. So I think that as pinball gets bigger and shown to more people, more money can be funded into the pinball scene as a whole. And I am going to talk about what things are stopping us from getting there as I get to the negatives of the things that hinder pinball right now. But I mean, overall, I think that we're heading in a direction of more streams are happening. I think that the shoutcasters that we're getting are getting more and more animated. They all have their own distinct personalities nowadays, which is great. We need more showmanship. I started this YouTube channel as a whole just because I wanted to kind of showcase a little bit more of a, not that there aren't other young pinball content creators, but I did want to showcase that there is a young population in pinball. I live in New York City, so obviously that's going to stray a little bit more young. But still, there is some form of diversity and some form of youth in the pinball scene. And I think that as more and more of us start showing ourselves, that only helps progress what pinball is and what it could be. Now I'm going to start talking about the negatives. I think that there are a couple things that hinder pinball in its current state. I'm just going to get the big one out of the way. Number one, I think the majority of pinball caters towards a certain demographic, and it's not as inviting for newer players as you might think. Obviously, we have some great things going on. We have bells, that really helps. We have, what did I write down here? We have, just the constant streams that we have now so people can watch it really helps. But I think it's more so about the overall vibe and culture of pinball. Something I'll bring up recently is that Dutch Pinball announced that they are releasing their new Alice in Wonderland, which is a game that I was actually quite excited for. I think the theme is intriguing, but on the reveal, the opinions of people were very split. Some people saying that they like the way that the playfield looks, and they like the way that the shots look and everything, which I don't necessarily disagree with, but a lot of the negative speech towards this game comes from the art, which, if I'm just going to be completely honest, it's very, maybe they were going for a classic pinball look. A lot of 70s, even up to 80s and 90s pinball machines had a very gaudy, very like all about cleavage and all about showing women with big, the big butts and everything like that. They went with that in this modern art. To me personally, just to give my personal opinion, and not that this holds any weight, I think that it looks like bad tattoo art. I think that the backglass especially is really rough in that standard, and I also think that it trends towards something that creates bigger problems, which is that this is exactly what I'm talking about when I say pinball isn't inviting. We have all these communities where it's like women play in bells, and I do think that we need more spaces for all people, not just women and men. We need spaces for non-binary people, which you could argue is or is not the space for Bells. I feel like that's not really my place to say. It comes down to whatever Bells decides. But we need a space for non-binary people nonetheless. I just don't think that you can say that, pinball is diverse and we have spaces for people like Bells, but then you just release games that constantly counter that, which is saying that this is the the things that we're creating are sort of demeaning towards the way that women are portrayed, or it's just a certain we want this specific type of woman and not other. This is not what this video is for. I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, nor do I want to really start this conversation, but I think that we have a long way to go in terms of how pinball is portrayed and seen by the average consumer, someone that's not into pinball. Obviously, I'm involved in pinball. I know that the large majority of people in pinball are not bad people. I know the large majority of people in pinball are there because they love the hobby and they are very inviting to people. But I think from an outsider look, it just doesn't seem that way right now. And it could be very difficult to change what is normal in the pinball scene. I think we need to stop looking at the past and praising some things that just do not hold weight anymore. And we need to move forward with, there's so many different things we could be doing right now with art and with themes that are not being held. I haven't even talked about the idea of like the themes that happen. Like everyone complains about themes when they get released. The last good one I can think of is Jaws, where no one really had a problem with the theme, but everything beyond that has felt kind of like, oh, we've treaded this before, or no one's really asking for this. I really think we need to put new thinkers down for what these themes are. I'm not the guy. To me personally, themes don't hold a lot of weight for why I would play a game, but for someone that's not involved in pinball, themes are the things that might get them into it. I have a friend whose favorite band is Rush, and when Rush was released, they had no idea what pinball was, but they loved the game. And that might be the thing that gets them into pinball, right? So themes are very important, and we need to address how to make new players want to get a machine, make them more involved. Gonna move on to the second thing now. I think the second thing that hinders pinball in its current state is the difficulty of pinball accessibility versus other hobbies. And I mean a couple things by this. First, I'll talk about competition. I think that in terms of like making it an esport, machines are very hard to move in bulk to locations, and then on top of that, you need a big enough location that can hold 250 players plus all these machines that are going to be brought in, and you need enough people that are willing to bring enough machines, which is a whole other thing. Price of entry to owning a machine in the first place is rough, and I know that a lot of players that own machines, they started by getting their old beaters, like their classic that was 600 and they had to fix up. You can buy a classic or a cheaper used machine. I think that for a classic, the tech work can be very intimidating for some people. For me personally, I live in New York City. I have nowhere I could even do tech work. Like if I'm doing it, it would be in my living room and there would be dust and dirt and everything everywhere. You can't turn down the volume on a classic, so my neighbors would hate me because it would all just be bells and chimes. So that's why I haven't done that. And also, like, even though getting a used modern machine is cheaper and you can get a good deal on that, I think cheaper in the whole scheme of things doesn't mean what people think it means. Like they'll say, oh, just get right now Led Zeppelin is pretty cheap, so just get a used Led Zeppelin. Even if you find it at $2,000, I think we need to reframe what money is to a lot of pinball players, because $2,000 is a shit ton of money. And it's not something that most people are willingly just slapping down to have a game to play at home. Other hobbies might have things that expensive, but not at the entry level. To own a machine is very, very expensive. My proposal is, I actually think that while people have their problem with home editions, Jurassic Park the home edition just got a lot of talk because it was released with Costco. I think home editions are great. I think that we need to keep working on home editions. I know that they're not perfect, but they're meant to be entry-level games. They can have interesting rules. They don't just have to be demakes of the bigger scale game. I think Jurassic Park actually did it really well, where it's just a completely different game than Jurassic Park, the regular version. And some people like a lot of things about that home edition. I know it's cheaper, but you're paying for cheaper. Like, it's an entry, it's a gateway for people to get into it. I don't mind that at all. I think that's a really good way to promote pinball to people that have smaller budgets. And I would even push some of these designers that are making custom games more in that direction as well, to think about the consumer and how to make it more accessible to people. All that to say, I just, I said a lot of positive, I said a lot of negative about pinball. Overall, I'm saying this because I love pinball. I want to see it grow. And this is just my opinion. You don't have to agree with it, but I do think that pinball as a whole should be moving and progressing with the rest of the world. And I hope that there are people out there that see what I'm saying and they agree. Or if you disagree, I would love to hear what you have to say in the comments. I'm open to discussion about this. Obviously, I'm new to pinball, so maybe I don't get certain things. But yeah, I just wanted to give a little bit of a rant about why I love pinball and the things I'd like to see for pinball's future. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will catch you soon.